The abandoned hospital. On a rainy winter night, a group of friends decided to explore a place that had been a source of terror and legends for decades. The abandoned St. Mary's Hospital. The hospital, which was shut down in 1985 after a series of mysterious events, was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of patients and medical staff who had met their end there. But tonight, the friends were determined to uncover the truth behind these legends, even if it cost them their lives. Ahmed, Layla, Khalid, and Sarah stood outside the hospital's rusty gate. The air was cold, and the wind howled through the bare trees. Ahmed looked at the imposing building and said, "I don't like this place. I feel like we're being watched." Layla, holding a camera, smiled confidently. "Don't be a coward. This is our chance to create amazing content for YouTube." Khalid added, "Let's get started before the darkness gets even scarier." After a moment of hesitation, they stepped into the hospital, leaving behind the safety of the world they knew. The hallways were dark, and the air was thick with the scent of mold and rust. Their footsteps echoed, as if someone was following them. Suddenly, Sarah stopped and said, "Do you hear that?" They all fell silent, and in the distance they heard faint sighs. Ahmed tried to calm himself. "Maybe it's just the wind." But Layla looked at him seriously and added, "Or maybe it's something else." As they moved forward, they arrived at a dark operating room. Medical tools were scattered everywhere, covered in a thick layer of dust. Khaled picked up a rusty instrument and said, "Look at these tools. They seem like they were used for unethical experiments." Sarah felt nauseous and stepped away, but before they could say anything else, a terrifying sound echoed. The door slammed shut, and the lights went out completely. Layla screamed, "What was that?" Who closed the door? At that moment, they heard a faint scream coming from the basement. After a moment of hesitation, they decided to go downstairs. The camera trembled in their hands, and the darkness was suffocating. Ahmed said, "This isn't safe. Maybe we should go back." But Layla insisted, "No, we're here to find the truth." When they reached the basement, they found a room filled with old dolls and strange drawings on the walls. Sarah looked at the drawings and said, "Look at these, they look like dark rituals." Suddenly, Layla heard footsteps behind her. When she turned around, she saw shadows moving quickly in the darkness. The shadows started closing in, and the friends ran in different directions. Khaled shouted, "Where's Ahmed?" But Ahmed was nowhere to be found. They heard his scream in the distance, and when they reached the source of the sound, they found his camera lying on the floor, but Ahmed was gone. Layla screamed, "Ahmed, where are you?" But silence was the only response. The remaining friends decided to escape, but they discovered that the doors were locked. Sarah panicked. "What is this?" The doors were open before. At that moment, they heard sinister laughter echoing through the hallways. Khaled said, "We need to find another way out." They ran through side corridors, but the shadows followed them everywhere. When they reached a large room, they found Ahmed standing in the corner, but he wasn't responding to them. Layla approached him and said, "Ahmed, what happened to you?" When she touched him, he turned suddenly, his eyes completely black. In a strange voice, he said, "You're next." At that moment, the camera glitched, showing distorted footage with screams in the background. Days later, the group's camera was found, but they were never seen again. After Ahmed's disappearance in the abandoned hospital, the friends returned to Layla's house, trying to process what had happened. But the nightmare was far from over. The next day, Sarah found a strange old doll in her bag. The doll, resembling a child with tattered clothes and empty glassy eyes, hadn't been there when they entered the hospital. But from that moment on, something began to follow them. At midnight, Sarah woke up to a faint scratching sound coming from her closet. When she opened it, she found the doll lying on the floor, but now its eyes were open. She tried to convince herself that she hadn't left it that way, but she decided to hide the doll in a box under her bed. However, The next morning, she found it sitting on her chair, facing the bed. Khaled, the most skeptical among them, decided to examine the doll. He noticed a small engraving on its back, written in an old script, "The hospital knows the truth." As he turned it over, he heard a child's laughter echo from the hallway. When he stepped out, he saw the shadow of a little girl disappearing behind the door. Layla, who had been recording, gasped, "Did you see that?" But the footage showed nothing, only a strange blur. The next night, Khaled decided to destroy the doll. He took it to the garden and set it on fire, but suddenly, the flames extinguished on their own. The doll remained intact and looked even brighter. When he returned home, he found a message written in red on his mirror. "You're next." That night, everyone heard small footsteps moving through the hallways. By dawn, Khaled had vanished. The only thing left behind was the doll, sitting on his bed. Terrified, Layla and Sarah decided to return to the abandoned hospital. In the basement, where Ahmed had disappeared, they found a hidden room behind a broken wall. Inside, they discovered old documents about unethical medical experiments on children, along with photos of dolls identical to the one Sarah had found. One of the pictures showed a doctor in a white coat with completely black eyes, just like Ahmed's before he vanished. On their way back, they noticed that the doll had returned to Sarah's bag. They tried to dispose of it in a nearby river, but when they got home, they found it sitting on the dining table with a new message, "Coming back soon." That night, as Sarah struggled to sleep, she saw the long shadow of the doctor standing outside her window and the doll smiling in the dark. The next morning, Layla discovered that Sarah had disappeared. The only clue left behind was footage from the home security camera, showing Sarah following the sound of a child's laughter outside, while the doll waved at her from a distance. Did Sarah really disappear? Who is the doctor with the black eyes? And what is the secret of the indestructible doll? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out more.